Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 19th of December 2023, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Pakistan's economic outlook, with a lot of positive indicators that seem to put Pakistan in the right direction as far as its economic outlook and economy is concerned. Whether it be the current account that has gone into surplus for the first time in 6 months, whether it be the regional exports that have swelled over 16%, whether it be the net foreign investment that has jumped 8.1% in 5 months. Of course, we will also be discussing the report that has come from the State Bank of Pakistan that forecasts real GDP growth to fall in 2 to 3% range in the fiscal year 2024. We'll be highlighting the positive outlook as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned, how things are moving in the right direction, and what are the different macroeconomic indicators that have contributed to this positive outlook. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story is, of course, the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Today is day 74. Israel is, on the one hand, facing mounting pressure from the globe as far as its barbarities on the Palestinians is concerned. The US says that it has talked to Israel about making Gaza war more surgical. The US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has also said he has urged Israel to protect the civilians in Gaza and make the war more surgical. This is the comment that I was referring to. Also, the Pentagon chief has said that the US will continue to provide arms to Israel. The UN Security Council that was to meet yesterday is going to meet today now to, of course, discuss the ceasefire as far as Gaza is concerned. Whether it will have any impact on the current situation is something that we would like to see, and we remain optimistic as far as this is concerned. This and more will be highlighted and discussed in detail in our second story. Our third story concerns the China earthquake that has rattled the Gansu province on midnight on Monday. Around 126 people plus are said to have perished as far as this 6.2 magnitude earthquake is concerned. And of course, scores of injured, and of course the infrastructure that also has been destroyed as a result of that. And there have been various aftershocks as far as this is also concerned. This is going to be our third story. Then we are going to talk about NASA that says it has used a state-of-the-art laser communication system on a spaceship 19 million miles away from Earth to send a high-definition cat video. And you can see the cat video in the parallel window as we speak. Then we are going to talk about Lady Diana. She still reigns the hearts of millions and millions of people, and now one of her dresses has been sold for around 1 million British pounds. I would like to say rather 904,262 British pounds. Now, this dress was worn by Diana in 1985 and has been now sold at auction for 11 times its estimated price. And this is what we are going to discuss as far as our last story is concerned. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns Pakistan's road to economic recovery, Pakistan's economic outlook, and all the different economic indicators that have paved the way for Pakistan to stabilize itself economically. We've been joined for this segment by Muhammad Shaaf Najib. He's an economist. Shaaf, thank you very much to have joined us. It had been quite some time that we had discussed Pakistan's economy or economy in general with you. So welcome to our show. Shaaf, let's begin with the current account deficit, the current account, and of course the forecast as far as it is concerned. What, in your point of view, has contributed to it? Is it the decrease in imports? Are there other indicators as well that have contributed to it?
Well, indeed, Omar, it had been a little time since we had a conversation, and thank you for having me at your show again. Sorry. So basically, as you talked about, that there are some indicators that have been showing some, you could say, positive movement in recent years. The current account balance as well, it's slightly moving towards reducing the deficit. The primary balance of the federal government as well has shown some progress in the last some time as well. And we have seen slight, you could say, stabilization in the foreign exchange market as well. But I think we need to assess these in context of a lot of things. Some of these, of course, we were forced to make those necessary changes. Forced to make those necessary changes, be it in terms of reducing expenditures as far as the government is concerned in terms of austerity or maybe reducing imports. But then again, there have been some costs that we had to pay. And that was in terms of reducing economic activity when we you could say restricted our imports in order to try to limit the capital outflow, as well as in a bit to reduce our current account deficit as well. But I think, of course, there are some wins and some costs involved in all of this. But I think what is really important in this time is that we now move towards more structural reforms, so that these, you could say, these benefits that we have gained are sustained over a longer period. Because as you can see, one example is the stock exchange, which over the last few weeks was seeing quite a rise in its activity. But recently, even just today, there was a drop of over 2,000 points despite no trigger, right? So that is majorly due to, I would say, the lack of any strong base in our economy, which is making capital flowing from one sector to another, increase the uncertainty and having these sudden shocks and sudden movements in our indicators. But I think it's
But don't
time
you feel
that
that
we
you talked about, the index that plunged around 2,300 points, but that is also because of geopolitical situation. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to what is happening across the world. So of course, a lot of people are wary of that, and that is why they sell a lot of their shares, and that is what happens. But generally, if you look at the KSC 100 index, it has only shown a very strong gain in the last few weeks, hasn't it?
absolutely, it has. But what, as I was saying, and something that you rightly pointed out as well, that still you could say, our economy on a whole is very vulnerable to shocks. And that is what we saw in the stock market as well. That despite the lack of any real trigger, it saw a great rise and it saw a sudden fall as well. So I think this is the time where we need to move towards structural reforms in our economy, so that this
I
vulnerability
like the
to,
word structural reforms, Shaaf. What kind of
yes,
structural reforms are you looking at?
I think the first of all is reforms in our governance structure, because unless we'll, you could say, update our governance structure as per the needs of the 21st century, unless we remove the regulatory sludge that is hampering or that is acting as a barrier for economic activity, we will not be succeeding in anything. And why is that? The reason for that is because, due to being stuck in those regulations, those bureaucratic red tapes, the economic activity is hampered. An investment that might have, you could say, might start in the next month, due to those red tapes and bureaucratic hurdles, take maybe a year. So the benefit that we could have, you could see the benefit that we could have gotten from the next month or maybe a couple of months in terms of increased economic activity, that takes up 10 or maybe 12 months of that. So that is where we need to start from. And once that economic activity begins, then we can move on towards reforms in other sectors, as we have always talked about, reforms in these public sector enterprises, reforms in the energy sector, reforms in other necessary sectors of the economy as well. But it has to start from our governance structure, which is the backbone of the economy.
Now, Shaaf, in October, you must have read the report by State Bank of Pakistan that talks about the forecast of real GDP growth to fall to 2 to 3% in the fiscal year 2024, which has now officially, in fact, begun. It talks about inflation, and when it talks of inflation, the report talks about improvement in domestic supplies, high base from the last year, and sluggish trend in non-energy global commodity prices. That are indicators that will help bring down inflation in the range of 20 to 22% in the fiscal year 2024. How can we achieve that given the circumstances that Pakistan is embroiled in?
I think the forecast that the State Bank has stated, these are the forecasts that are to some extent also being mirrored by the IMF in its report of the region recently, where they talked about that, yes, Pakistan hopefully will achieve 2 to 3% of growth, as well as there would be a slight reduction in the inflation as well. So I think that could be seen as, I think what this time needs is that the government's communication with the public in this is very important, because a positive policy signal from the government needs to be there so that in these testing times, the people and you could say the business community and all the economic agents have a little bit hope in the future. They're willing to take some risk in the future when they see that, yes, the government has a certain economic plan to that. Of course, inflation has been a major problem for Pakistan in the recent years. One major cause for that is, yes, global commodity prices, but also the local energy tariff as well. And I think one thing that is going right now in favor of Pakistan is how the global oil prices are coming down. And I think if that is able to translate into reducing or maybe even in the short run stabilizing the energy prices, that could actually be very beneficial in you could say reducing inflation in Pakistan in the coming months and hopefully restoring some sort of economic activity so that our economic growth could at least reach the point that has been predicted by the State Bank and IMF, and then eventually we can also talk about growing much beyond that.
Now, when you talk of deficit, when you talk of current account deficit, the fiscal deficit, the State Bank of Pakistan says would be in the range of 7 to 8% for fiscal year 2024. And it talks about the higher interest rates that might continue to prevent a notable reduction in spending. Is this beneficial or non-beneficial, the higher interest payments in your point of view? And do you feel, there's a whole, we talk a lot about, bringing people in the tax net, increasing, so that more and more people can pay their taxes. How can that be achievable in one end that could be feasible and at the same time easy for those who have not yet entered the tax net?
Well, Omar, see, there is something that's very important to understand in this context is the difference between your primary balance and the fiscal balance. So the primary balance is basically the difference between government's revenues and expenditures, where we do not consider the expenditure of government on interest payments. And when we also consider the government's interest payments among expenditures and compare that with the revenue, that is basically our fiscal balance. So our primary balance, that is our all expenditures of the federal government, other than the interest expenses, they are very similar to our revenues. The primary balance has been around -1% or maybe even lower than that or somewhere around that, right? Sometimes we have even recorded in some quarters some sort of primary balance as well. But when we include interest payment expenditures of the federal government, that takes our fiscal deficit to, which was somewhere around 5% last year. And as you stated, it is expected to increase to 7% this year. And why is that so? That is because our interest payment this year are actually 77% of our targeted tax revenue. So you could see that that is such a major expenditure on us. And I think one major reason for that is how we have managed our debt. There were two major faults in that. Number one being that we relied a lot on foreign debts during the last, you could say, external debt during the last couple of decades. So that when we had the option of maybe taking loans domestically, the federal governments, and not any single government, but repeated governments opted for external debt in that. And that increased our interest payment liabilities, especially in terms of procuring dollars to pay back that loan. And secondly, of course, we took short-term loans instead of long-term loans. So of course, the repayment of those loans is very in a very short period. What needs to be done is we need to manage our debt profile going on from here much better. We need to focus on trying to get loans wherever we have to locally so that we do not have to worry about buying more dollars to pay back just that loan. And secondly, we need to prolong our debt profile so that our debt does not mature in the short run, and that would not increase our interest payments in the coming budgets exponentially. That would reduce the per year interest expenditure, and that would help government manage its other expenditures better and maybe even help reduce the fiscal deficit as well as make the primary balance go positive in the coming years as well.
Now, Shaaf, you talk about dollars, that we need to have more dollars in our kitty, in our banks, in order to stabilize our economy. the net foreign investment, as per a report, has jumped 8.5% in the last 5 months. It talks about the FDI, which is of course very important, and also are the remittances, which form part of the FDI, has risen 8.1% on a year basis to 656 million US dollars during the first 5 months, July to November of the current fiscal year. It also says that the FDI in November also grew by over 12% to 131 million US dollars. Do you feel the FDI is an important indicator as far as you yourself said in layman terms, increasing the number of dollars in our kitty is concerned?
Well, Omar, of course, any you could say increase in FDI is positive, is a positive statement for the country. But when you have a very low base, then even a large increase in terms of percentage does not make much of a difference. So for a country of 250 million people like Pakistan, 656 million dollars of FDI is not much, I would say. So I think that is one aspect where, of course, once our economic activity increases, once we make it easy to invest in Pakistan, that is when investment will actually flow here at a pace which will be beneficial for Pakistan and Pakistan's growth. Let me give you an example of Dubai. What is Dubai's biggest selling point to its investors? It is that you can start your business within just hours, right? You can go there, you can fill up all the regulatory requirements and get started with your business immediately. That's an incentive that they have to attract investors. Now, on the other hand, countries like Pakistan, developing countries were struggling to grow economically. When it's going to take you tens of permissions and NOCs, and it's going to take you months or years to start a business, then of course not only foreign investment but even domestic investment will not be attracted. So as I said, that yes, any increase in investment, especially foreign direct investment, is a positive sign. What we need is to improve our governance structure so that people are attracted over here. Let's not forget, Umar, that we are a population of 250 million, but majority of them are youth. So we are a market not just for today. We are a market for the next 30 years at least.
Prepare ourselves in that regard. You talk of,
exactly.
Shaaf, you talk of the increase as far as Pakistan's exports, and that is one of the necessity that is required by our country in order to strengthen ourselves economically. I'd like to refer to data that has been compiled by the State Bank of Pakistan that was also distributed on Monday, that is yesterday, and it said that the first 5 months of the current fiscal year witnessed a double-digit growth of 16.9% in exports to 9 regional countries, mainly China, but other countries as well, whether it be Nepal, Bhutan, the Maldives, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Iran. Don't you feel that that it is also important as far as increasing exports to these countries is concerned, and what are the mechanisms in your point of view that need to be installed in place in order to further boost our exports to these countries where our exports are already increasing?
Well, almost certainly. Of course, there are two aspects. Number one, an increase in the volume of exports, and secondly, a little bit of inflationary impact as well, which also causes an increase in exports. But we cannot say that the entire export was just because of an inflationary impact. Of course, we can see that whatever little that we might have to offer to the world right now, there is a market for that. There is a market for Pakistan origin products, and we need to capitalize on that. One thing that we need to do, first of all, is we need to determine what is it that we need to start exporting. Because let's be honest, in agriculture sector, we are far behind the world. We need to modernize in that before we can talk about exporting. Same with manufacturing sector, where the world has started moving towards artificial intelligence. We are still dependent on labor intensive industries. Yes, we can still export these goods, but that will take us time to compete with the world. Services industry is one thing where I think Pakistan has the potential to capture the global market. And for that, what we need to do is we need to make regulatory ease so that Pakistan-based companies can actually go abroad as well. They can invest as well, and they can start expanding. They can make up multinational companies, because we need not just to think about exports in terms of what we sell from Pakistan, but we need to think of making our companies large enough that they turn into multinational companies. Right now, we always talk about different companies that are coming to Pakistan, and I think that is always good as well. But what we also need to start dreaming and start working about is developing Pakistan companies and expanding them into multinational companies. That is when Pakistan is actually going to, you could say, stamp its holding on global markets. And I think services sector is that one place where we can actually have a good starting point at this moment. And with facilitative environment within Pakistan, with regulatory ease, we can help them grow into multinational companies that can earn us good foreign exchange as well.
Shaaf, what are the structural impediments in your point of view that are posing serious risks to Pakistan's macroeconomic stability?
Well, first of all, I think one of the major issues is policy uncertainty, arbitrary policy changes, and I think that's something that needs to change. So one of the things that needs to change is less dependency on SRO culture, especially in terms of taxations and in terms of bans and in terms of permissions that we grant, because no one is going to be involved in any sort of economic activity if they do not know what kind of policy they're going to expect over the next, let's say, 10 to 15 to 20 years. So we need to have a stable policy, number one. Secondly, that policy needs to be homegrown. That policy needs to come with consultation from local stakeholders, local think tanks, local academia. Our policy at this moment is highly dependent upon donor agencies. You know, our development plan, our development policies are highly influenced by the donor agencies like the World Bank, the IMF, the Asian Development Bank, the FCDO. We need to take policy decisions out of their hands and take them into our own hands. And then we develop a homegrown economic and homegrown development policy, and then we take it up to them or maybe other bilateral partners that this is the plan and this is where we are going to need your support. That's the first thing that's important. Secondly, of course, we need a stable export mechanism, stable export, so that not only our local productions increase, which is of course going to help us export to other countries, but also help us gain more dollars. That is going to add a lot more stability on our external sector as well. Because once our external sector is stable, only then we can start moving towards, you could say, a stable macroeconomic conditions locally. So these are the things where I think we need to start from: developing a homegrown policy and focusing on increasing our production overall, so that we start exporting.
All right.
And for
All right.
that, I
Shah,
would say.
yeah, Shah, finally, I'd like to understand two things. Do you feel that our relationship with the IMF, as well as the 100 billion 5-year project of the SIFC, are also important as far as Pakistan's economic stability is concerned in the coming years, in the coming fiscal year as well? Do you feel they could play an important role? And do you feel that as far as the relationship with the IMF is concerned, that needs to be further consolidated, stabilized, or should we try to rely less and less on main lenders like the IMF in the future?
Look, Omar, it's important to understand for Pakistan, be it the Pakistani politicians, policymakers, or the general public, that IMF is not here to solve our problems. IMF is never going to any country to solve their problems. The problems need to be solved by the country themselves. We saw that in case of India. We saw that in case of South Korea. We saw that in case of some of the Central Asian states as well. They were in a very similar situation to Pakistan. Yes, they went to the IMF, but they went to the IMF for temporary support. And what was that temporary support for? To have some loans to support their external sector while they try to rebuild their economy. And they developed a local economic plan on which they have consistently worked over the last, you could say, 30 to 40 years and benefited from that. And eventually they got rid of not just the IMF, but they got rid of all of their own need for those loans, right? So that is very important. Secondly, as you talked about SIFC's plan, right? I think something that gives me something that I personally look forward to are the elections. Because once an elected government is in place, then they come with a mandate. They come in with what the people of Pakistan have mandated them to do, and that's when we could see that. Sorry, we could hope that they start working on those long-term plans. What I see SIFC as is that it is a short-term patch on our ever-long issues that we have been facing. Because what SIFC might be trying to do is that it is trying to reduce the sludge that, as I talked about earlier, exists in our bureaucratic, you could say, bureaucratic circles. But SIFC is not a long-term solution. It might be a short-term solution while you work on a long-term solution, and that is going to come through
But
governance reform.
it's an important patch nevertheless, and it's important, mechanism in order to facilitate all the issues that have been troubling the foreign investors when it comes to FDIs. So let's see how long and how important this patch remains to be as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned. Nevertheless, for the time being, looks to be set in the right direction. Thank you very much, Shaaf, to have joined us. That was Mohammad Shaaf Najib, economist, talking to us about the different macroeconomic indicators that Pakistan has been moving forward in the right direction, and of course that are showing that Pakistan's economy might be stabilizing and is stabilizing since the last few months, and we have had different indicators as far as that is concerned, whether it be the current account that has gone into surplus for the first time in 6 months, whether it be the increase as far as different other indicators are concerned. Pakistan, if it continues in the same vein, will go in the right direction economically. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns Israel-Palestine Day 74 of this conflict that has engulfed not only Palestine but also the entire world, directly or indirectly, because there are so many indicators that show that there is a depolarization within the world as far as the Palestinians are concerned, and in the long run so many other issues have cropped up, whether it be Islamophobia, whether it be the way the Palestinians have been treated, whether it be the similitude between what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, that shows that there is a certain mechanism through which the Israelis are moving forward and are torturing or carrying on with their barbarities as far as Palestine is concerned. To discuss that and more, we've been joined by Nader Alturk. He's the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Palestine in Pakistan. Thank you very much, Brother Nader Alturk, to have joined us.
Thank you, brother.
Day 74, as far as this conflict is concerned. We are going to have another session of the United Nations today, in which they are going to discuss the ceasefire. Are you optimistic as far as the outcome of this session is concerned?
First of all, thanks a lot, Brother Omar, for giving me this opportunity to be your guest tonight. For ceasefire, I think you remember that before we go to the Security Council, we almost succeed because 13 of the members agreed of ceasefire. British didn't say yes or no. Only the American veto, as usual, to support Israelis in genocide and killed more and more civilians, Palestinian civilians, people, innocent children. More than 9,000 children killed until now in Gaza. More than 20,000 innocent civilians, more than killed. More than 54,000 injured. 10,000 Palestinians still under the rubble of the damaged houses. With that, the Americans still stand up with the Israelis because their president proud to be Zionist more than being proud of his president of the strongest country in the world. So I'm optimistic of one thing, that humanity become humans again by supporting Palestinians issue, by stand up with Palestine. When we go to the General Assembly, we got 153 vote in favor of Palestine to ceasefire in Gaza. On the other hand, the resolution of the General Assembly don't have the power to be aware of the ground before the Security Council approve it and going on with that. But with the American veto, we're still facing a problem. Mr. Guterres, the Secretary General of United Nations, mentioned that according to Article 99 of United Nations, what happened in Gaza, it is actually make security and stability of the world in danger. With that, the Americans, as a member of the Security Council, it is one of their first things they need to worry about and work hard about it is security and stability of the world and the humanity. With that, they ignore all of that, turn their back to the humans in Gaza, and only support Israelis in genocide and ethnic cleansing and war crimes. So we're waiting and see what is going to be happening tonight.
As far as the European Union is also concerned, we've seen the meetings of David Cameron, who was met with, who is going to meet French President Macron, Italian Prime Minister Meloni, and of course, do you feel that these meetings will pave the way for some kind of an understanding, let's put it that way, because I feel that there's also a lack of basic understanding of the turmoil that the Palestinians are going through. I'd like to refer to what France's foreign minister says, that it is going to impose sanctions on extremist Israeli settlers. Is that enough, just imposing sanctions on settlers? This is also something that has been reiterated by the US some time back. Don't you feel the measures that need to be taken as far as Israel is concerned need to be more stringent, need to be more effective, and need to be stronger?
One of the Jewish professors mentioned that the problem is not with the settlers of what the others. The main problem is with Israel's leadership, as it is. We speak about Netanyahu, Ben Amir, Ben Ghafir, and Smotrich. All of them are radical groups supporting settlers and settlements. And actually, they killed, as I mentioned before in your program, that even they killed their own prime minister because he was taking step or in the right way and create peace with Palestinians, with Yasser Arafat in that time. So they only killed him because he taking that step, because they don't want peace, they want only one thing: kill more Palestinians, transfer Palestinians out of Palestine, and establishing their great Israel from Nile River to Furat River, which means destroy many of Arab countries to rebuild great Israel on the damage of the rubble of that countries. This is what the scenario in the mind of the Israeli leadership. So the problem is not only the settlers, the problem is the leadership of Israel itself.
What happens to the people in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, with the number of hospitals that have been destroyed? A majority of the hospitals are non-functional, either because they've been destroyed by the Israelis or because they're not being allowed to work, be operationalized properly. I mean, let's talk about the hospitals. Al-Awda Hospital, the Nasser Hospital. We've got reports of hundreds of people being detained, of the Israeli forces that are inside these hospitals, so-called searching for Palestinian extremists. But in the meantime, who are really suffering the most? Isn't it the children? Isn't it the women? Isn't it the elderly? Isn't it those people who need aid the most? And in the whole context, when you also look at how the United Nations, the World Health Organization have also been highlighting the plight of the people without a strong reaction whatsoever coming from the countries that can make that change.
First of all Palestinians in Gaza Strip are suffering. All civilians are suffering. And as example, today one of my cousins passed away only for one reason, that he have some disease like blood pressure. He don't have the medicine. There is no clean water in Gaza since the 9th of October. There is no electricity. According to that, he passed away without the medicine, without the clean water. And this case is one of thousands of cases we face it daily in Gaza. So when we mentioned the hospitals, the attack Shifa Hospital, because this was having a propaganda that the leadership of Hamas are hiding under the hospital. They're going in, occupy the hospital, arrest all the doctors and the nurses in that hospital. Until now, the director general of the hospital arrested in the Israeli jails, and they found nothing. They go to Kamal Adwan Hospital in north of Gaza in Jabalia, and they damage the hospital. Not only that, they take the bulldozers over the tents of the refugees, Palestinian civilian refugees, in the garden of that hospital, going over them, kill them, injure them, and after that burying them alive under the ground. And with that, still the American speech that the Israelis keep in mind the safety of civilians in Gaza. So I think the problem not only with the Israelis, the main problem is with the Americans. Leadership. We need to speak that the people of America are actually right now supporting more and more, especially the young people.
There's been a protest in New York also very recently.
Even the Jews themselves in New York, they're protesting in favor of Palestine. Before 2 years, if you remember, when the Israelis attacked Gaza in 2021, I give you a vision that time, that one day soon, Israelis, they will become a very heavy things to hold, because anyone going to support them will feel shame. Okay? And this start to be happened right now. The public opinion of the world starting changing in favor of Palestine. Right now, I give you second vision. The easy formula to lose election for any Western country, including the United States of America, going to be mentioned that he's a Zionist or supporting Israelis. Mr. Biden right now, who's supporting his position, supporting him as a president, 34% of the people, according to the statistics of day before yesterday. So this is going to be the easy formula to lose any elections. Anyone going to be mentioned that he's proud of being Zionist, he's going to support Israelis, he will lose the elections. And the people, his people, going to looking for other leader, he's not mentioned that such thing like this.
All right. I'd like to also mention here what the Human Rights Watch says. It says Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war. You were mentioning the example of your cousin who didn't have the medicine, who didn't have clean water, and that is why he passed away. There are, as you yourself have mentioned, thousands of examples such as these. Also, adding to that, I'd like to understand when a very important NGO like Human Rights Watch talks about Israel using starvation as a weapon of war, where does that leave all the so-called champions of human rights across the world that have been highlighting? For example, when there was the incident in Charlie Hebdo in Paris, all the leaders came together and protested and said that we are with you. Why aren't the important world leaders getting together and protesting that we are with the Palestinians as well?
Words are good, but not strong enough. Solidarity with Palestine is good, but not good enough. We need more support. We need to have action on the ground. First of all, we need to understand who is speaking about Israel criminals' action against the Palestinians is not anti-Semitism. This is a secret weapon of the Israelis, who is facing the Israelis and mentions their crimes against humanity. He is not facing the Americans. He is only facing the leaders of the United States of America, but not facing the people of the United States of America. So we need to work hard with the people, work hard to promoting the real story of Palestine, promoting the real crimes on the ground created by Israelis. As I mentioned before, not only starving to death the Palestinians. There is no water, there is no electricity, no medicine, no food, no fuel even for the generators of the hospitals. With that, our people still stand up facing the Israelis and stand up with their own homeland, because they understand one thing. The Israeli scenario is they do all this such of things, all this collective punishment only for one reason, to make Gaza a place not able to give any resources to live, to make the people transfer from Gaza to Egypt, from there to all the world countries. So our people understand that. They refuse to become refugees for the second time in their lives since 1948 until now. So they will stand up in their own homeland, patient, stronger, struggle for freedom and peace and stability in their country. One day soon, inshallah, we will see our independent state with Jerusalem as its capital appear on the ground, on the land of Palestine, and then with Jerusalem as its capital, and then the Israelis and the Americans' leadership and all the Western countries who are supporting blindly the Israelis will take lessons of humanity and freedom fighters, how they can survive and live and win the war.
All right. I'd like to also understand, do you feel this war that Israel is waging on Palestine is going to have wide-ranging repercussions on the region as well? Do you feel other countries might get involved in the long run if this continues for a longer period of time? And if so, what consequences will it have on the Palestinians and on the region?
With Mr. Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, going to Article 91, he is, I think, the most professional person he can speak about that thing. We start to see what happened in Yemen, in the Red Sea. We saw that each ships have any shipments, any containers for Israelis are not allowed to pass Red Sea. And this creates a huge problem for all the world, not only for the Israelis, and the Israelis start suffering, economically suffer from what's happening right now in that issue. We saw clashes from Lebanon against the Israelis, and still we speak about 74 days, and the Israelis until now, they have many goals. First of all, release their prisoners. They release none. Only killed by themselves 3 their prisoners, and 4 actually.
And that has also had a lot of protests within Israel because of the fact that
they are not succeed. Second, they said we're going to damage the fighters in Gaza. They couldn't. We didn't see any video, any photo for even one of them arrested by the Israelis. We saw only civilians, and they make fake movies by getting them some whippings to hold it, and some of them are conductors, journalists, and something, and they keep them necks. And you see maybe the photo with the Nazis, how they deal with the Jew and during the Second World War, and how the Israelis dealing with the civilians they're arrested in the north of Gaza when making them naked, to arrest them. You compare between Nazi and between Zionism. Third thing, they said that they're going to give peace and stability for their people. They didn't succeed until now to do that things. So this gives us one thing. Israelis, as Mr. Biden mentioned for a few years before, that it is investment cost United States of America $4 or $3.5 billion a year. And they give them every year a lot of whippings, a lot of bombs used to kill our people, and they think that this power going to them peace and stability. But actually they have none of that. They only have more crimes, more bad face around the world, crime by shame around the world, they and their supporters. So I think this gives us the other plan B. Plan B is going for international law, human rights principles, and peace process. They need going to go back to the roots of humanity by creating together peace, not more wars and more crimes. This is plan B, what is the Israelis need to understand. It is the only plan available to get peace and stability. It is available on the table, but I don't know how long it's going to stay on the table. Because if 9/9 article become really on the ground and become really dangerous for the security and stability of the world, we don't know this war going to lead us to where. So this is option still available on the table, but I don't know for how long. The Israelis need to take it or leave it, the option for them.
My last 2 questions, I'd like very, very short answers to them. Firstly, Netanyahu says that he wants the Israeli military to control Gaza once this war is over. What's your reaction to that? 75 years of occupation, and he didn't control the Palestinian people. 74 days in Gaza. Until now, he couldn't control Gaza Strip. We speak about 360 kilometers. We speak about 2.3 million Palestinians, and he couldn't control, and he speak about 40 to 50,000 armed people in Gaza. With that, he couldn't control Gaza until now for 74 days of genocide, crimes against humanity. So you think so that he will succeed later on to control Gaza for security reasons? The only way to security is creating peace, getting independent state of Palestine with Jerusalem at its capital, facilitate the right of return for Palestinian refugees to their own homes according to Resolution 194 by United Nations, which was published in 1948. This is the only way to getting peace and stability and getting security. Any other ways going to lead for more circle of blood, more circle of violence, more circle of killings, and the Israelis one day soon going to be crying by shame, and they will not find anyone to support them, and they're going to feel shy to mention that they are Zionists or they are Israelis. Right now, the Israelis around the world, the Jew around the world, afraid to show the signs that they are Jew.
because they are afraid of their lives. According to their leadership in Israeli leadership, crimes against humanity by killing innocent people and children. They are afraid about themselves. Americans themselves are afraid of their people around the world, according to their blind support to Israel in their crimes. So the only way is peace, 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 nothing else.
All right, last question, but I want a very, very short answer. Are you still optimistic? Do you still have faith in a two-state solution?
We have two options, two-state solution or one state for both people. I'm still optimistic, of course, because if not, as a human, I need to be optimistic. As Muslim, I need to be optimistic. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Quran, الذين قالوا إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. If Allah said that, as a human, what can I say more?
I think we'll end it here. Let's remain optimistic, even if we're cautiously optimistic about the future of Palestine. And let's hope that the world understands the reality of the situation and who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed before it's way too late for the region to control or confront the situation that is engulfing the world slowly and steadily. Kindly stay with us for a few more minutes till I finish the show, Excellency. And thank you very much, Brother Nader Alturk, to have joined us. That was Nader Alturk, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Palestine in Pakistan, joining us and talking to us about the Israel-Palestine conflict that has entered its 74th day. Let's come to our last three stories very, very quickly. The first about the earthquake that has rattled northwest China, Gansu province. 126 people at least are feared to be dead. And many have been injured. There have been structural damages as well, and there have been scores of aftershocks that have happened in Gansu as well. Of course, the government in China is doing the needful to help those who are in need. The US Geological Survey says that it was a 5.9 magnitude earthquake. The China's state news agency Xinhua says that it was 6.2, and the shocks were felt as far as away as the major city of Xi'an, about 570 kilometers away. Our deepest thoughts and most profound thoughts go with those who've been injured, those who've lost their lives and their families as well. Pakistan always and will always be and has always been a strong brother and an ally in the good and the bad times. Next, now NASA has sent a cat video from deep space. NASA announced it has used a state-of-the-art laser communication system on a spaceship 19 million miles away from Earth to send a high-definition cat video. This 15-second movie, let's put it that way, instead of movie, we call it movie, that features an orange tabby named Taters, is the first to be streamed from deep space and demonstrates that it's possible to transmit the higher data rate communications needed to support complex missions such as sending humans to Mars. You know, there is no stop to science and to what the inventions are happening with every passing day, and this is just an example of that. Finally, Princess Diana's dress. We all remember Lady Diana, and she was, is, and will always be the princess of our hearts. One of her dresses has sold for a record 900,000 British sterlings at an auction, 11 times its estimated price. This black ballerina length velvet evening dress was sold at Julian's Auctions in Hollywood for a total of $1,148,080 US, otherwise 904,262 British sterlings. Just goes on to say, you know, when you love a person just like Lady Diana was and is loved, all her belongings also are sold at an exceptional price. Just shows, goes on to show the love that still remains in the hearts of the people for Lady Diana. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's show. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with story segments that pertain to you, us, and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.